Welcome one, welcome all to the greatest show of them all. It is the NFC East Mixtape Volume 123. Did you know that the final day of this calendar year will be 123-123? That's 12/31/23. That's right. This is Volume 123 of the NFC East Mixtape, which you can listen to on any one of your favorite NFC East blog podcast networks across the SB Nation universe. You can also watch us on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel or the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. I, RJ Ochoa, am back in my normal office. Brandon Lee Gowton, is I think he was there last week as well. BLG, were you sitting exactly right there last week when we recorded?
Sitting exactly where we are. I'm going to crack open a beer here, RJ. That can opening was not as satisfying as I wanted it to be.
Really?
Yeah.
What is it?
It's not. So BGN Radio is a sponsored beer.
Let me guess. It's an IPA. You're an IPA guy. I can totally see that.
No. BGN Radio is a sponsored beer called Wrong Crowd Brewing or Beer Company, which everyone should check out, especially in PA. Wrong Crowd Beer, but the NFC East Mixtape, not officially sponsored by them.
You did the mistake that everybody does. Yeah.
Not officially sponsored by them. So I'm drinking a different beer here on this podcast. I had a Wrong Crowd beer on BGN Radio earlier today. It actually is a double IPA. I didn't pick that out on purpose. It just happens to be. Look at the can, though. It's a good can. Not a
strawberry
jams.
Oh. You know, I saw a blueberry beer the other day on the internet, and I thought, like, I don't know if that would be good, but I'd be willing to try it. We're getting close to the dog days of summer, I suppose. And so if you've never had, I guess I'll ask you, have you ever had Leinenkugel's Sunset Wheat, Brandon?
I've had the brand. I've not had that specific kind.
It's very good. I discovered it in college. And so when you discover something like what I'm about to tell you in college, it's like the only thing you want to do because you just think you're the most cool person in the world. I think it's amplified with an orange slice, but it tastes just like Fruity Pebbles. So if you're looking for that kind of taste, Leinenkugel's Sunset Wheat comes with the RJ Ochoa.
You're saying
Sunset Wheat specifically.
Let me write this down. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I can spell Leinenkugel's. They're not a sponsor either, but LEINENKUGEL.
I know. Yeah, I know enough to know. Yeah. Okay.
So Leinenkugel's Sunset Wheat. I promise you, tastes like Fruity Pebbles.
Okay.
It is we normally record at 12-ish Central, Eastern, whatever, on Tuesdays. It is Tuesday, August 8th, but if y'all are wondering, like, holy crap, BLG's on his second beer of the day. It's 3 o'clock Central, it's 4 o'clock Eastern, so he's had a full work day. In case anybody has any questions or qualms or concerns. We have a lot to get to. Today it is the first full week of the preseason. We're recording this, Brandon, on the day that Hard Knocks premieres, so it is fully, absolutely football season once again. Very, very fun. Lots of Eagles takeaways to get to, of course. Cowboys, I'm back from Cowboys camp. There have been some joint practices with the New York Giants that have not gone well for a few of them that we'll obviously get to. And man alive, this is maybe the most excited I've ever been to talk about the Washington Commanders based on what happened earlier today for you and I. But we, of course, start with the reigning division champions, and that is the Eagles of Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts, through what I saw described as a horrible throw that was picked off by Reed Blankenship on Tuesday afternoon. Can you explain how Jalen Hurts is clearly going to collapse as an NFL quarterback in 2020?
Yeah, he just rolled out to his right and kind of just surprisingly underthrew Quez Watkins. It was weird. Jalen Hurts usually doesn't really have issue with arm strength, I would say. Kind of just a weird play, but Reed
was the throw on the move, or had he stopped?
He was on the move. Well, I'm pretty sure he had rolled out right at some point. I don't know if he was rolling still as he was throwing, but he did roll out right. Anyway, to not address your BS question, Jalen Hurts voted the third best player in the NFL by his peers. Chris Jones said something to the effect of that was the best performance in a Super Bowl by a quarterback that he's ever seen. Chris Jones, notably teammates with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's also funny because Carson Wentz, who was in the news recently, as you know, was also number 3 after the 2017 season.
So that was that was 5 years ago, exactly, right? That was the 2018 list.
I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to be Carson Wentz and follow that trajectory, but it does speak to the point we've talked about before of like, you have to stack the good years, like, because there's quarterbacks who can have a good season and things go weird after that, and you would never expect it, and I'm not expecting that, but that's the thing, you don't expect it. So I feel good about Jalen Hurts. I think he's at a good camp overall. Still been kind of cool after a hot start, but the big news really in Philly, RJ, if we want to look at team's different concerns. I guess I didn't have so much a concern for the Giants, although
Can
we
I
might be
guess
able
it?
to get.
Because I do think this is valuable because this is like this is
Mhm,
what other people view the team's concerns to be, and you can tell us whether that's accurate or
mhm,
not accurate. I think the concern right now, if you have to pick one, is the depth at linebacker. N'Kobe
right.
Dean, I saw your tweet on Tuesday. What is he?
Mhm.
I'm not being facetious. He's missed 4 practices in a row, something like
Missed
that.
4 out of 8 team drills. So he started the
Gotcha.
day, but he couldn't participate in team drills. So he's missed basically half of training camp in terms of team drills
Hmm.
to this point, and that's especially significant for like it's one thing. So James Bradbury missed some time as well. He's actually back now, but like James Bradbury is 30 years old. He's an established player.
Yeah,
He
has a
doesn't
new
need like these.
contract. Yeah, it's not the same
He
thing,
doesn't need
right?
these reps at cornerback. Jacoby Dean is going from backup to starter, year 1 to year 2. Also, not only like playing more, but is the signal caller of the defense. He's the green dot, so he's getting the defense lined up. That feels like a position where you would especially like to get as many reps as you can for the sake of even just like communicating with your teammates and everything, and the cerebral part of the game. So it's not like press the panic button, the season's over, but it's certainly not ideal. And also, I think before he got hurt, he didn't look bad, but he didn't look great. So that's not ideal. The Eagles signed Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham. I don't think it's like, wow, these guys are great and they're going to be stars at the position. It's more of a, okay, we're not great at this spot, admittedly so, but we're going to throw more options at the wall to see if something sticks here. And it's not like, again, the Eagles are looking for a playmaker, game changer at this position, as they're just looking for competency. And I mean, it says a lot about the Eagles roster that you can single out a position like this and it's underwhelming, but they're trying to do things to address it, but they're pretty strong elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't know which insider it was. It might have been Ian Rappaport or Mike Garafolo, one of their tweets about the news. And it was something to the effect like, I'm paraphrasing, but it was like, well, this doesn't mean that N'Kobe Dean sucks. Like it was very clearly like a message
Mhm.
from and I'm not like bagging on the Eagles for that, but like it was very clearly like a positive spin, from the insider in question. And it's okay. Like it's just okay to admit that like maybe it's not working out. And I think that that's I know this sounds really negatively slanted towards the Eagles. I don't mean it that way, but kind of like how you talked about, like it's important to stack the good years when you're talking about Jalen. Like it's
Mhm.
important to remember, like not everything that looks genius is genius. And maybe N'Kobe Dean turns out to be a fine player. You know what I mean? But like when that
But
happened, it was like, oh man, here they go. You know what I mean? And like so turns out everybody passing on him may have been for a reason. We'll see. The jury definitely still out on that, but the acquisition of 2 linebackers certainly doesn't help his case. But you've been honest about that all off season long. Like when we did the All-Star teams, you were like,
yeah.
there's no real off-ball linebackers to, really
Well,
consider from the Eagles.
in the NFL in general, like how many good off-ball linebackers are there? You think about like Fred Warner, okay, Demario Davis and the Saints is another one I think is pretty good. Am I missing
Leighton
anyone?
Vander
Like,
Esch.
yeah, but you're not putting him up there
But
with Fred
he's
Warner.
no, but he's one of the best, which is to the point. Like there aren't a lot. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like
a
they're
pretty
it's a
thin position around the
right.
league. So
Yeah,
that's why I don't think it's like great. It's not like, oh my gosh, the Eagles are weak at linebacker. It's this disastrous thing. It's like, it's not ideal. But the fact that you're able to bring in more guys like this, Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham, look, they haven't been amazing in recent years, but they're credible starters. They're like actual legitimate NFL players who that
real
if you have to
people.
play them, yeah, who might at the very least give you like some kind of replacement level play as opposed to being like total liabilities or just getting crushed and you can't even actually like realistically play them snaps without being totally embarrassed. So, it's fine. It's what Harry Roseman does. He continues to tweak the roster throughout training camp, and that's kind of just how it goes for him.
So that's the kind of negative percolating. I saw some of the responses to the Hertz interception tweet where they were like, "Great to see Blankenship doing this." Like that was the like positive. Like
Hmm.
you've been on Blankenship's corner for a little bit.
Yep.
Has he taken a bit of a step? Also, what is the status of Jordan Davis? That was kind of
Yeah.
the big old deal. Like, have we really kind of seen everything coalesce along the defensive line?
I think Jordan Davis, I'm not ready to say he's making this huge jump from year 1 to year 2, but I think he was on a positive trajectory last season before he got hurt. The injury came at a really bad time for him because the Eagles were only using him exclusively in 5-man fronts early in the 2022 season. And against the Steelers, they finally were using him in 4-man fronts for the first time. It's like, yes, we're seeing Jordan Davis in this new role. And then he gets hurt, hurts his ankle. And it's like, No, this is bad timing. And then after that, I don't think he was like fully healthy when he came back. And then he was competing for snaps with Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph at that point. So it seemed like he was on a good trajectory and things went haywire there. I think he's been okay in camp. I don't think he's been like dominant. The Eagles need more out of him in year 2. When you lose Javon Hargrave. So
and Jalen Carter.
What?
Just the status. I was just following up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Carter is also, I think, a guy who I'm more interested to see in the preseason games. I think, I don't know if that's a guy who, like, goes all out in practice and signs in that setting as much as someone like Nolan Smith does. And also defensive tackle. I just think it's a position maybe where you get a better sense of that when they're actually playing the games and you can actually tackle and whatnot. So, on the whole, Eagles training camp has been relatively uneventful, which I think I talked about last week. That's like a thing you want. You don't want to be having a lot of dramatic storylines and team drama and whatnot. They've been pretty boring in a good way. Yeah, it's not good for podcasting though, because now we're talking about it. And it's not really exciting or fun.
My last question, you mentioned Nolan Smith. I read that he got work at off-ball linebacker, which again kind of speaks to like, we're willing to try everything. So again, not like sound the alarms on Nakobe Dean, but like that is a legitimate cause for concern as evidenced by basically everything else that the team is doing.
What is this?
I read that Nolan Smith was worked at off-ball linebacker at one point.
Oh, well, I mean, not to the point where he spent the whole practice there. Like they put him there for some snaps. And I think that's fair to experiment with because he's so athletic. One thing I noticed about Nolan Smith today that it's not like shocking, but like really stood out in practice today when I was there. He's hard to block. And I guess maybe you can relate to that with Micah Parsons at some level where and like Von Miller, these undersized pass rushers, like one of the things they have going for them is they're not massive and they don't have that size and that can work against them in some respects. But when the offensive tackles like can't get their hands on them because there's not a lot of space there to like put the hands on them, that can work to their advantage. And Nolan Smith's crazy athletic. I'm really interested to see what role he plays this year. He's going to be rotating, so it's not like he's a starter or anything, but I think he's going to be a very interesting player to see how they deploy him. Will they put him at off-ball linebacker at times? I mean, they could have him rush from there. It's not even like he has to drop and do traditional things. So intriguing for sure. Yeah, that's all I've got.
The Eagles visit the Ravens on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern. That is a nationally televised game. It's on NFL Network. How many NFL Plus commercials have you seen?
None.
You haven't seen a commercial? Like that's everywhere I look. Like every like ad on the internet is for NFL Plus.
No.
So
I mean, maybe. Okay. I mean, I just am totally.
You're making the podcasting difficult today. Jeez. I'm trying to have some fun. You're over here like, what's happening in the conversation?
Not a lot of juice. Not a lot of juice to Eagles training camp.
Well, wow. Sounds like they're only winning 3 games this year. You heard it from Brandon Lee Gowton.
That is not what I said.
Any other Eagles takeaways before we move on?
I mean, I think part of what makes camp boring for this team is that the good players are looking good. So it's like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Jalen Hurts. They've all looked good. So it's an offensive line looks good. DeAndre Swift is doing good things. Rashad Penny running well. But none of that is surprising. So that's kind of not the most like. How do you write? Wow, I think AJ Brown's gonna have a good year. Like, okay, yeah, duh. Like, and so everyone's expecting. I think it's going as expected, which is a good thing for them.
Okay, very chalk for the Philadelphia Eagles so far. Okay, the Dallas Cowboys also play on Saturday. It is a 4 p.m. Central kick. It's a home game for them, but then they're headed back to Oxnard.
Eagles, Ravens. I totally forgot. The Ravens have that preseason winning streak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like 17 in a row or something. Yeah, I don't know exactly what it is.
It's like a crazy. I'll look that up.
Hang on, let me look it up.
Okay, you look it up.
Yeah.
Can the Eagles? That's a huge storyline. Can the Eagles and the Ravens? I mean, does that matter at all? Obviously not. But would it like kind of be fun to be the team that does it? Sure. Like that's as far as like meaning goes in the preseason, which is pretty meaningless. Do you want to be the team that defeats the team that doesn't lose in the preseason? Sure, why not?
Okay, so it is 23 games that they have won in a row. They last lost a preseason game on September 3rd, 2015.
Oh my gosh, so that's crazy!
Holy crap!
That's incredible. That's really bizarre because it's just the preseason.
It is the record.
So random.
in case anybody knows, I mean they've held that record for a long time now, because the previous record was the Packers from 1959 through 1962, who held it at 19 games. The second longest active streak, by the way, belongs to the Buffalo Bills. They have won 9 consecutive preseason games. If you're curious, the Ravens are 20-3 against the spread in that span as well.
That's
so they haven't
that's really good. That's really strong.
I know. And if you care about that particular element, this is according to Fox Sports, so their sportsbook. They are 6-point favorites. The Ravens are on Saturday. So
maybe
yeah,
I'll
bulletin
put, like,
board material
on the Ravens for the fun of either I win or the Eagles were the team that knocked them off finally.
The most recent win, so the final preseason game last year for the Ravens was against the Commanders. So, one NFC East team couldn't do it. Okay. The Cowboys will play the Jacksonville Jaguars and Dougie P on Saturday afternoon. It's at 4:00. Like I was saying, it's a rare thing. It's a home game for the Cowboys. They normally play their first preseason game on the West Coast because they're out in Oxnard, but they're heading back. And then they'll head back to California. They're kind of treating it like a road game. Then heading back to California. A Metallica concert or sequence of concerts has complicated matters at AT&T Stadium next week. Is it one?
Sure, that's a great one.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, I know a little about everything. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of my.
That is definitely true. You know a little about everything. You're right.
Yeah. So anyway,
emphasis on little.
So since we last spoke, by the way, as we are speaking, Jerry Jones, for what I think is like the 4th time this training camp is on NFL Network. So they just sort of permanently set up at the River Ridge NFL Network has. But since we last spoke, Malik Hooker got a long-term deal with the Cowboys, a new one. Just an incredible deal. Really only bumped up his cap number this year about $500,000. Has had a resurgence in his NFL career in general, was a first-round pick of the Colts in 2017, obviously, and really kind of turned into an awesome center fielder for the Cowboys. I think that does, if you're looking long-term, spell the end, in all likelihood, of Jaron Kearse, because you got Malik Hooker making big-ish money, you got Donovan Wilson making big-ish money, and Jaron Kearse is on the final year of his deal, but obviously anything could change. Since we last spoke to, the crazy Dak Trayvon stupid narrative thing happened. Thank God that's over.
Wow. Stupid. It's okay when like Reed Blankenship picks off Jalen Hurts.
Oh no, I was saying that sarcastically because I'm so annoyed with the Dak Trayvon thing. Like, and I said that I thought it was very obvious that my Jalen Hurts thing was very sarcastic.
It is funny how fans just like be like, well, this means Trayvon hates Dak. It's like, okay, I'm sure. Yeah.
It's really dumb. Actually, we're recording this the day that LaShawn McCoy was out at Cowboys camp. So I'm sure there will be something to come of that. But
did say the Cowboys are looking good. Said top 3 team in the league in terms of talent.
They really are kind of taking turns at this point. Like the defense has a day, the offense has a day. Somebody pops, somebody else pops. We talked obviously last week about kind of initial takeaways. I was halfway through my week at that point in time. My biggest takeaway, and I'm super happy that most people have finally come around on the dumb McCarthy run the ball comment. I've spent a lot of energy trying to help change the winds of narrative on that front. But yeah, I think the only like kind of silly thing percolating through the air at this point is the like, will the Cowboys bring Zeke back? That's the only thing that still has some legs to it in terms of storylines.
Which will happen, obviously.
You were the first person I ever heard like put that out into the ether. So I
fully believe it. It's not even a bit. Like I fully believe that's going to happen until I see something otherwise. Remember all that time ago when he was aiming to sign with the team?
Oh, next week. It was at the end of next week. Like the report was like on a Thursday, and it was like at the end of next week, and that was like in March.
Back in like March, and it was like he wants to go to the Bengals, Eagles, or I forget another team. Jets. The Jets. I think Jets. Yeah, as well. Yeah.
Well, he did have a visit with the Patriots at least, like recently.
He did. That's right.
Something that's been like some catnip for Cowboys fans, and that we discussed in past tense for the listener, but in future tense for me, because it will be later tonight in real life for me, on our blog on the Boys Roundtable. The Cowboys have been using Leighton Vander Esch at edge, which is unique. Like kind of talking about the Nolan Smith playing, like I think that there is this. That's what I'm saying. Like there is this category of like positionless football now on defense. Like we see all these like safety linebacker hybrids. Now they're like really like positionless linebackers, like, you know, that like who, like you mentioned it a minute ago, like who is your true classic off ball only linebacker in the NFL? I mean, because even Fred Warner, who you mentioned, like rushes the passer a lot. So that's cool. I mean, it is interesting to see. Micah Parsons gave Leighton his flowers in an interview with ESPN, talked about how it was important to bring him back and et cetera, et cetera. The defense is kind of, the vibes are good. I mean, like, make the jokes you want, like, oh yeah, Cowboys going to the Super Bowl this year. I've heard that before, but like the vibes are very, very, very good with everybody involved. No real injuries. I was asked. So actually, let me find the tweet here because it was important. If you can buy me a second here, Brandon, please.
Yeah, I had 2 questions when you're done that I had based on.
So first of all, shout out to Stephen Lee, Stephen_Lee 20, who tweeted on Monday night, the NFC East mixtape quickly became one of my favorite shows.
Let's be clear here, didn't tag anyone. It's not like you tagged the
right,
podcast,
right.
which honestly you should. I would like you to do that if you're complimenting the podcast, so we definitely see it. But Steven's a real one. It's just like he did a tweet, but in a positive way. I appreciate that.
So to your point,
he wasn't looking for like the
attention.
Glory for this.
Right.
Yeah.
So the second line Steven wrote was, I didn't think it was possible to like a Cowboys fan. And then in parentheses, my dad's one, and I don't like him as a result. And then he said, but RJ is cool. And to your point, he just wrote RJ. Like, he didn't tag me at all. Right. So I appreciated, like, you know, being told that I was cool indirectly. But nevertheless, Dave Hinden on Twitter, at Dave Hinden, responded to the tweet because I said, forever loved the mixologist, a name that I know you hold near and dear to your heart. So Dave said to me, you brushed past the Zach Martin situation last week, but would like to hear your thoughts and feelings when you record this week's episode. Those fines really adding up. Interesting situations as holdouts are so rare. So first of all, kind of in the like neighborhood of dumb storylines. So once the holdout reached 10 days, the Cowboys are fining him $50,000. Like, this is known. Like, this is like known information. Like, that players will be fined $50,000 a day. So once we had reached 10 days, like, quick math here, that was $500,000, wow. Which was a funny number for you and I in an offline conversation earlier today. But anyway, so
RJ was talking about how much money he owes me.
So that day, the 10th day, somebody was like, oh, the Cowboys have fined Zach Martin $500,000. So this becomes this like massive headline, like, oh man, like he's being fined $500,000. It's like, yeah, well,
like it happened overnight.
Like, yeah, like it was so stupid. So while I acknowledge it's a lot of money to all except Brandon Lee Gowton, I remain unconcerned. If we get through the preseason and this is completely and totally like zero progress has been made from this point to then, I will start to panic a little bit. But this really does just kind of have the vibe that it's going to get worked out one way or another. They're just not at that point yet.
I mean, you could always just pay him the money back, right?
Yeah, like if they do restructure his deal, they could like add the whatever it winds up being, like $1.2 million if it gets to that. Like,
oh man, it's lost and it's gone forever. He's never going to make any more. The 2 questions I had about the Cowboys watching from afar, I saw Luke Schoonmaker, the 30-year-old rookie tight end, is finally active.
Good pronunciation. A lot of people say Schoon. It's Schoon. Good call.
Well, you corrected me early on that, so you keyed me in on that. We educate the people here, some would say on the podcast. So I saw he's activated, and that's kind of interesting because, like, from afar again, the Cowboys tight end position is a little bit unsettled in the aftermath of losing Dalton Schultz. Will be interesting to see what happens there. So we'll see if he can kind of get in the mix. And then I saw today Mozzie Smith had a precautionary MRI, which is like a weird phrase. I wouldn't love that. That's not like the best development to pop up out of nowhere.
I know you were done. Sorry. You kind of sounded like you were like you had a second part of that. Yeah, so that was reported on Tuesday by Tom Pelissero. Said that he had been battling tendonitis. If you like peruse the blog on the boys comment section, like after practices, it's like, well, haven't seen any Mozzie highlights. Stupid pick, awful pick. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, Brian Baldinger saying like the Cowboys may have drafted, you know, the next Ndamukong Suh, but like the good one, not the one the Eagles got. But anyway, I mean, we'll see. You know, the initial word was that it wasn't a big deal. Also in the Pelissero report on NFL Network was that Tyler Smith, last year's first-round draft pick, was absent on Tuesday, that his back tightened up. He was specific in saying it's not believed to be a significant thing. But during practice, somebody who did practice, a different Tyler, not Smith. So we went from Mozzie Smith to Tyler Smith, now to a different Tyler. Tyler Biadasz had an injury pop up. There's still like some what's going on with Tyler. At the time of this recording, that's unknown. So obviously everybody check out BTB. Yeah, I mean, not ideal, but I think right now the panic meter is low until we know more information. There hasn't been a big moment from him yet, but I think everybody's willing to give the Cowboys the benefit of the doubt.
All right. Are you ready to take a break?
Here is the break. Welcome back. While we were gone, Brandon, you told me why you were so passionate about learning how to juggle.
It's because I have this new. Did I tell you about my new Apple Watch?
I think you had told me that you were planning on getting one.
Yeah, because I was a dummy and took my old one into the Chesapeake Bay.
Right.
And it was a Series 3. And in addition to that, being older, I was playing pickup basketball one time across from Pat's and Gino's.
I bet you're skilled considering you're 6'5". Like that's probably a big advantage for that.
Someone like came down on my arm and the like my screen didn't break, but it disconnected from the screen part popped off of the base, I guess, if you will. And I had to fix it.
Brandon talks for a living for everyone interested. So
anyway, I had to super glue it, but I don't think the integrity was as good as its original factory seal. So I went into the water, and I'm pretty sure the water got in there, and the watch doesn't turn on anymore. Anyway, I got the Ultra, and I'm liking it a lot. It's huge. It's really big, and I think it's great. And this is the setup I have. If you want to look at it, it's the modular setup. I'm a big fan of the practicality of it all. I want to see the time. I want to see my battery charge. I want to see my activity ring and the text messages. I don't like this view. By contrast, I'm pulling up the view where there's so many complications
like an analog
on it.
view. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have to the time is so small. It's just too much going on, too much to look at. So
this is mine. So I've got big numbers, but in the corners, I've got the temperature. Oh, what is that?
How do you know how much battery? Do you have the battery on there?
No, I don't need to know the battery of the watch.
You need to know the battery.
I don't need to know the battery. It'll alert me.
What if it's low?
It'll alert
what if it's low-ish?
Okay, so what are you gonna do if you're out in the world and it's low? Oh no, let me go home to my charger right now. No, you're not. It's not gonna change your life or change your function of your day. So
the thing that's concerning me coming out of New York Giants training camp is I hear Jalen Hyatt is looking good. I think we brought this up on last week's episode, but I continue to see buzz about him, and that's pretty annoying. So also, Ed Valentine insists that Daniel Jones is having a good camp. So take that for what it's worth. I did see that the Giants didn't necessarily have a great training camp practice against the Detroit Lions. I saw some buzz that the Lions won that practice. At the same time, I did see our good friend Jeremy Reisman from Pride of Detroit, who's a Lions fan, did say that it was a little bit more even than some others thought. So don't know what to fully make of that. And also, it's joint training camp practice. It's not the end of the world. If the Giants aren't looking great, and the Lions are generally expected to be better than them anyway. So I don't know.
Yeah, I saw the same thing from Jeremy. By the way, on the subject of SB Nation wide things, starting this Friday, every Friday, Brandon and I are podcasting together again with our good friend Steven Serta from Arrowhead Pride. I don't know what we're calling it. I know we've talked about that and not answered it. No. I don't know. But either way, every Friday, I guess this Friday we'll review some of the Thursday
Friday
games,
Football Friday.
Every Friday we will review obviously Thursday Night Football and look forward to the week to come. We'll put together our same game parlay that we've done in the past. I don't think that we ever hit on one, if memory serves. So the bar is low. So hopefully we can clear that this year. But everybody subscribe to the SB Nation NFL show wherever you get podcasts. You can listen to us every Friday. I'm also on Mondays with Mark Schofield and JP Acosta.
No one cares about that.
Of course, Ray Shelby.
How about this?
Anyway,
from the
no worries. I had a point about the Giants and Lions, but whatever. How about this? Go ahead. It's your dumb thing.
View. I'm looking at Ed Valentine, our good friend, posted a recap from the Giants Lions joint practice. I don't think he's there, but following from afar. One Giants reporter said, quote, "It was the worst the first team offense has looked all camp." So yeah, certainly sounds like not a good day for the Giants, and their season is over.
This is weird. I think you'll agree with this. I think the only thing getting positive buzz and attention out of Giants camp right now is Darren Waller. That's it, right? That's the only thing that's consistently and continually getting hype and getting praise. Which is exciting.
Yeah.
That's fair. But so like on one hand, it's like awesome. Like the Darren Waller trade looks like it might pay dividends. But on the other hand, it's like, well, why does everybody else suck? It's still early. No need to panic. But I do think this is my like kind of big takeaway. I think, because we're getting really closer like to sort of normal football ether surrounding us. And I do feel like the national narrative has sort of started to like land on the take of like, oh yeah, the Giants are going to regress. Like, you know what I mean? Like that was actually what Mark Schofield suggested. And I asked like, what's a team with like regression hiding in plain sight on Monday? He was like, oh, the New York Giants. You know what I mean? Like I do think like people thought that all off season long, but now that it's time, like now that some people are like back in school, you know what I mean? So to speak, people are like landing on that opinion finally.
One thing I did see that's bad about the New York Giants is that Evan Neal has been missing some time. It's a concussion, so
That's right.
A tricky injury always to kind of gauge in terms of recovery timeline. But kind of like I talked about Nakobe Dean earlier and how important it is for him to be on the field and getting these reps, as you need that player to make a jump from year one to year two. Talked a lot about Evan Neal here on the podcast previously. I mean, maybe it's just a blip on the radar. He misses some practices. He comes back. He's fine. But for him to be missing key time here, and a very vital player, I think, even more so than Nakobe Dean is to the Eagles' success this year. Evan Neal is a huge kind of X factor for the Giants, because if their offensive line continues to be an issue, well, that's probably dooming the team's ceiling. So that's one to monitor for them.
We've said this many times, but first 6 weeks of the season for the Giants: Cowboys, at the Cardinals, at the 49ers, Seahawks, in Miami, at Buffalo. Has anything changed? Has anything changed your mind to make you think like, oh, they might win one more of those games than I thought?
Well, what is like the optimistic scenario? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, okay, best case scenario is they go 6-0, but that's not happening.
So
like, what?
So like,
how do you
forgetting
realistically?
These are the teams. Again, forgetting locations: Cowboys, Cardinals, Arizona. Niners. Yeah, that one's easy. So then
maybe the Niners aren't good. Let's give the Giants a win there. Maybe the Niners.
Yeah, like maybe there's some slow like start there. Maybe Seattle
stinks.
Yeah, maybe Seattle's a question. You know what I mean? Like maybe the Geno thing is falling apart. That's a month in.
Win
maybe
3.
Maybe Miami. Tua has a bad. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, but
but I don't think you can say all of those things. Like, I'm saying, if you're gonna give them the benefit of the doubt, like maybe one of those two things happens between Miami. Like, I don't think Miami and Seattle and the 49ers are all bad. You can't say all that. Maybe one of those or two of those teams doesn't look good. But that's what, like 2-3 wins there.
I think they're fortunate to be 3-3. I think we agree on that.
Like 3-3 would be like a really nice outcome for them. They'd be like, yeah, well, if you could tell Giants fans they're gonna be 3-3 in that stretch, I think everyone's signing up for that.
Okay, let's move finally to the Washington Commanders. I think this, is really the only thing we need to talk about. So we've mentioned Nikki Jabvala. She's awesome. Maybe the best person who covers the Commanders. She does so for the Washington Post.
Get her on the podcast.
I know. Well, we might as well do that. Let's make that happen. We'll do like a group DM sort of thing. We'll be like, hey, Nikki,
her,
what's up?
Tweet at her and then tag us too.
Let's do this. Yeah,
Bully her to come on the podcast.
Every person who wants to get her on, besides Brandon and I, tweet at her. So her handle is Nikki Nicki Jabvala, and we'll make sure we're correct on that. JHABVALA. Yes. And if you're a fan of the mixtape, you're probably following her. I would guess that. Like if you're this
not,
level of fan, she's incredible. So tweet at her and say, please go on the NFC East mixtape with at Brandon Gowton and at RJ Ochoa. Anyway, but make sure to say please. We always have
so funny.
Our manners
if we DM'd her, she probably would. But it's funnier to me if we do it as a bit where we try to force her to.
I agree.
On the podcast.
Okay, so I'm not going to read this whole thing, but she tweeted on Tuesday morning, asked Ron Rivera about Eric Bieniemy. By the way, the same Ron Rivera who RJ has very famously never bought in on.
All right, hold on. This is more about
that
Eric
BLG
Bieniemy.
Has. Oh, I disagree. I'm excited for this. That BLG has stood up for. So the question: have players had to adapt to Eric Bieniemy's intensity, and have any struggled with it at times? I'm gonna skim through this, but so these are the bullet points. Yeah, they have. One of the biggest things is I had a number of guys come to me and I said, hey, just go talk to him. I said, understand what he's trying to get across to you. As they go, they talk, they listen to him. It's been enlightening for a lot of these guys. Whole different approach. You're getting a different kind of player from the players back in the past, blah, blah, blah. Guys coming from certain programs, blah, blah, blah. So as a coach, I kind of have to assimilate and get a feel for everybody. Eric has an approach, and it's the way he does things, and it's not going to change because he believes in it. Jack, who BLG also loves, has his approach. Having been a head coach, I think Jack has a tendency to try to figure out a little bit more as opposed to, hey, this is it. This is the way it's going to be, that type of stuff. And then the follow-up question, when they came to you, they being the players, It's just they felt like Eric was riding them too hard. And Ron Rivera's exact quote, well, they just were a little concerned. So I will go first. I kind of side with the consensus here. The consensus was like the players are soft. Washington is soft. Like my opinion is that it seems like Eric Bieniemy is coaching them very hard, and they do not like that. And to that, I say like I have zero issue with what Eric Bieniemy is doing. Like go Eric. Like Eric Bieniemy has a standard and is used to winning, and it seems like they are not willing to meet that.
I definitely think hard coaching. It's not one size fits all. I think there's teams that probably could benefit from more of that approach than other teams. And I do think it's fair to say that maybe the Commanders are that, given what they've been. It's a new era, and they're trying to lay this foundation in some ways. But they're at the same time, I think you look at the concern. Like I've said this all the time about Eric Bieniemy. It's like it's the same thing of like, well, how could Nakobe Dean possibly be in the third round? He must, like every team messed up. He's amazing. The Eagles got a steal. Blah blah blah. Well, like maybe teams passed on him for a reason. And why can't that same logic apply to Eric Bieniemy? Well, maybe teams didn't hire him as their head coach because there was legitimate concern here. And maybe he doesn't have the best tact when talking to players. And that's not to say that he can never get on players. One of the big highlights of Eagles training camp last week on Friday was Nick Sirianni getting after Jalen Hurts. At the same time, I don't think that's like Nick Sirianni's yelling at the players all the time and kind of has that reputation of being that guy as much as that's a button he can push when he needs to. I think it's fair to ask, is that something that Eric Bieniemy does maybe a little too much? Is that more than just a button? And is that who he is? And could that get old? And also, is that the most effective strategy, especially relative to the players? Because certain players need to be coached certain ways too. I think some guys can take the hard coaching better than the others. So you have to figure out how to push the right buttons for the players. And I don't know Washington's players enough to know if that's effective or not. So I kind of wonder about the Bieniemy part. I will say it's kind of weird that Ron Rivera is admitting this and not keeping it in-house. That part I do agree with. That's weird. Yeah, but I don't think it's like wrong what he's saying.
So I think like if we disagree, like, and to be clear, like I agree with you that like there's tact involved, right? Like you can't coach every player the same way, whatever, blah blah blah. But you know, whatever. If you want to call it disagreeing, if we disagree on that, fine. Like again, I think there's multiple schools of thought on that. But yeah, I think like everyone is on the same page. You're like, what the hell are you doing, Ron? Like this makes Ron look bad. You know what I mean? Because it's like, first of all, it makes it look like you're not doing anything. And second of all, it makes it look like you have no judgment for what you should or should not share. It also makes Ron look bad for the culture he's created. And it's also Ron like outing his players. You know what I mean? Now the offensive players
outing the coach, it makes the coach look like he's like a jerk.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like there's nobody involved with this team that heard this news and it's like, hell yeah, Ron, way to go. Like you know what I mean? Like everybody's like, dude, you sold me out. Like again, I have long said that Ron Rivera is an overrated head coach. This feels like not that I needed it or not that there wasn't opportunities for this before, but this is some serious vindication for me, at least on this show.
Okay, interesting. I think it's not necessarily the best look for Bieniemy. And part of the reason this came on my radar
it is a way worse look for Ron. Even it might be a bad look for Bieniemy on some levels, but it is a horrible look for Ron Rivera. I think this is the first time we'll drop it. And excuse me for like coining or taking your thing. This is the first big loser energy of the season. Like this is some big loser energy from Ron Rivera.
We need a soundboard. We need a soundboard to match some of the terms we use here. We don't have one.
What would the soundboard be? Like a different version of our voices saying the exact same words?
No, like when we use familiar podcast parlance.
So there's
like jargon, if you will.
Like when you say big loser energy, it's like, bah, bah, bah. Like
exactly. Yeah, it'd be funny.
Yeah, I guess.
I think, yeah, I just have questions about Bieniemy, and I'd be consistent about that.
How do you not have bigger questions about Ron? That's what I'm saying. Like at least like Bieniemy is showing.
Well, I mean, I don't think he should be their head coach. I think it's a lame duck kind of situation. So I'm already kind of written him off. Basically,
this makes it seem like he is their head coach. Like what is it? Like
he is the head coach, but I mean, like they should start. They have to start fresh. They have to.
We argued about this last week about like McCarthy and Sirianni, and everybody loved that, and so we were super mature about it. But in that respect, like the argument was about picking on coaches who do nothing. Like Walker, what is Ron Rivera doing for this team? That I'm legitimately and genuinely asking this question.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's only creating a mess at this point.
the Commanders intimately enough on a day-to-day basis to, have that nuance. I think that's something you have to have sometimes to really fully know that answer and follow them daily to kind of have a better sense of that. I think that what I was saying was that part of the reason this is on my radar is because LaShawn McCoy tweeted about it. And LaShawn McCoy was someone who came out, who played for Eric Bieniemy with the Chiefs and came out strongly against him. And some players, have disagreed with that assessment. I think there's been, I don't know if it's the most credible buzz. There's been rumors over the years that Bieniemy and Mahomes had, they're kind of weren't always seeing eye to eye in some regard. So this isn't like coming out of nowhere. It's not just like a total non-issue that's being made up. How much it matters, I think, is up to your interpretation. And honestly, it's not the biggest issue that the Commanders have going on. The biggest issue is like, do they have a quarterback who can play? I saw today that Sam Howell was looking good in, practice, but like, what does that mean? Is he?
I mean, what do you mean? What does it mean? You said he was the most underrated player in the.
Oh, I'm saying like, is he really like what is good? Like, is he? And he also, is it one good day? Is he looking great every day? Is the Commanders' defense bad? Like, what's going on here? I mean, it's nice to see if you're a Commanders fan, but is there any quarterback who like isn't looking good? And yeah, there probably are some. Maybe Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield down in Tampa. It sounds like they're not looking good. But how many quarterbacks in training camps are like being panned right now is looking really bad?
My takeaway from Washington this week, I feel better about Eric Bieniemy than I did before today.
No.
So that's fine. How do you, loyal listener, feel? Are you more team Bieniemy or are you less team Bieniemy? You can tweet that at Nikki if you would like as well. But you should
no,
at least tweet.
well,
this was her report, like her quote that like sparked the whole.
Don't do
like,
that unless you already tweet the tweet.
Yeah. If you're gonna tweet at her, it has to be your second tweet. So agree with that. Okay. So quickly, just because we brought this up and I mentioned the timing of it all, while we've been recording, it was reported that Tyler Biadasz has a right ankle injury that is not considered to be serious. So not a big deal for the Cowboys, thankfully. I know you were super pumped to hear that. Should we get to our song choices for this week?
Well, I had a quick final thought to get to.
God.
I was thinking about this. I went to Taco Bell on Sunday.
Did you get Mexican pizza? No tomatoes. That's the way to rock.
I got the new grilled cheese dipping taco. I think it's really good. I would give it an 8.8 out of 10. I stand by it. Now, in fairness, I will say I went to a Taco Bell that I think is like the best Taco Bell I've been to in the past. Like this stuff is always like tastes good, it's fresh, it's wrapped really well. Like they do a good job there at that Taco Bell preparing it. And I've had other Taco Bells that I went to that don't always do as good on the quality. So this may have been elevating it, to be fair, but I thought that was a really nice experience. And I talked about that more in the latest or 2 BTN radio episodes ago, I guess. But I will say the thing that hit me as I was eating the other thing that they brought back, it's a burrito and there's those red strips in it. They have those red tortilla strips like in the taco sometimes, the crunchy ones. I'm like, no, we're doing this wrong. Those don't have flavor. They're just texture, but there's no flavor with that chip. What we need to do is get Taco Bell to team up with Takis Bell, if you will, some kind of pun there. And I think that's a killer combo. If you could make a hard shell that is maybe like Taki flavored or you have a Taco Bell taco or burrito, whatever, with Takis inside.
They've done this. They've done it with the Doritos. I mean, like, it's basically what you're describing.
No. Takis is a different level. And
I know it is. I'm just saying it's the concept's been,
they haven't done the Taki inside of the burrito, and I think they need to do that. So
I'm going to interrupt you because according to the Associated Press, Chase Young says he is, quote, finally feeling like himself again. So watch out. On a food related note, my pellet grill is finally up and running. I got to use it over the weekend and holy crap, it's delightful. So okay, are we ready for songs?
Yeah.
Rachel, always punctual, sent us hers bright and early on Tuesday morning. She said her song choice is Good Life by Kanye and T-Pain. So an excellent song. Great job, Rachel. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first? What do you want to do?
Yeah, it's a good album. You can go first.
I love how eclectic our playlist is overall. I think that speaks to the personalities of all three of us. So we don't have
anyone listening to this. Is anyone like listening to this all the way through?
I think so. We don't have this artist yet. I think we need it. We need a presence. We need some Kesha. Wow. So I'm gonna go with the song "We Are Who We Are" by Kesha.
Okay.
I think that's the official name. I'm making sure.
Well, I mean, that would be an important detail to have for
Well,
the playlist.
we
Shout out to our friend here, by the way, who does the Spotify. So RJ manages the Apple Music side of this, but we have a friend, a loyal listener, and a friend, I should say, who does the Spotify side of things. Big shout out to them for maintaining that weekly as just a loyal listener.
It is We Are Who We Are, the letter R, by the way. So if you wanted to call it like We Are Jay Who We Are Jay, it's up to you.
Jimmy has this kitten that he took in. It's kind of like a rescue. Jimmy Kemsky from BGN Radio. And its name is RJ. It's not after you. It's after his brother-in-law, who's named Ron, and they named it Ron Jr. But he says RJ every time, and it gives me nightmares. Anyway, my song, incredibly niche, could not be more niche. Maybe it's called "Vital Vessels," and that's not Vessels. It's Vessals for some reason. "Vital Vessels Vindicate." It is the last song on the Deer Hunter. That's the name of the band. That is DEAR, not DEER. The Deer Hunter, this big concept album, last song on the album. This is canonically, in my opinion, the last song that should be on the NFC East mixtape playlist. It is the final song. There's something about the lyrics in that song I like. There's a part at the end where it goes, through all of this, I felt just the same. The flame is gone, the fire remains. And then it ends.
Okay. Well, they've all been added. Now it's the earliest I've ever updated the playlist. Do you know how long we've been doing this?
What do you mean?
How long we've been adding these? The songs.
Like I don't know, like a month and a half ago or so. 2 months ago.
Almost 3. So there are 33 songs between you, me, and Rachel, which would be 11 weeks worth.
11 weeks.
But there are 35 songs as a whole. Do you know who the other 2 came from?
I mean, Kiss. I don't know. Did we ever add? I don't know if you added Kiss in there.
Kiss had the first. He was the first. First outsider. We'll call him that. And then Jimmy. Yeah, Jimmy. Of the aforementioned RJ fame.
And we'll get Nikki's when she comes on the podcast.
That's the same. Nikki could be the third. So that would be cool. Okay.
We really should get some little behind the curtain talk here in front of the show. We really should get a check-in from Ed and Nikki, because we need to get an inside, boots on the ground look at some of these other training camps.
I mean, I don't know if you listened to the last 47 minutes, but that's literally what we just planned on doing. So, I mean, you're like, oh, we should do the thing that we already said we should do. So great job by you, Brandon. You're really... No, but Ed is under. I can't wait to hear what song Ed adds, by the way, when he eventually returns.
I feel he's gonna be like, no.
No, I think he's gonna He's gonna
no
like
music.
play.
He doesn't listen to music.
No, he's gonna be like, well, you might as well, New York, something like that. Like
I was gonna say Frank Sinatra. Yeah. That's a good song though. So I would allow that.
That song has one of the more, I hate it because it's associated with the Yankees, but I like the beginning is so awesome. Like it's one of the most recognizable beginnings to a song ever. You know what I'm saying?
Love
They're like,
bum,
bum, bum.
Wow, what a bold take. With my friend Jess when we went to New York.
You are super unique, Brandon, in that you think Frank Sinatra is great.
He's great.
Last thing I'll say, and then we can get a last thought from you. You know this about me. I hate when people present super popular opinions as their own like unique thing. I feel like I hate all the people jumping on the Lions Brigade.
Thing you do all the time. Yeah,
I never do that. But so I've talked about Tyler Biadasz, who thankfully is okay. This upsets me so much, and because every person who does this thinks that they're the first person who did this. They'll be like, well, I call him Tyler Badass. Holy crap, you
dude, that is so cool.
You were the first. I bet you.
It is funny how people think that.
But people really like. There's different people who really think that they were the first to do something. Like again, that's one example. But like the people like I was in on the Lions before anybody. I said they'd win the NFC North before anybody did.
It's the same energy I feel like when people asked about someone like who has like a cast on. Let's say, oh, how did you break your arm? It's like, you're the first. But they always do it in a way, or people do it in a way where it's like you're the first person. Obviously, you want to know. You maybe care about this person. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to ask, but I feel like the energy with which people ask with is like they're the first person to ever ask that. It's like, I've had this cast. Like, obviously, I'm dealing.
I've had this conversation 4,000 times.
Yeah.
So I'm super pumped for 4,001. Like I applaud people in that situation. So like in my example, like when Tyler Biadasz is doing like an interview, they're like, we call you Tyler Biadasz. He's like, wow, that's good.
Wait, did you make that up?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that was
my final thought is
hill.
I'm wearing a Tasty Sub shirt. I used to work at Tasty Sub in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, and they have other locations in New Jersey. If you're in New Jersey and if you're looking for a good hoagie, not a sponsor, but you should check out Tasty Sub.
Tasty Sub backwards, bus eat set.
Okay, put the end screen on now.
I used to do that a lot in high school. I would say words.
I'm sure
backwards.
you did.
I don't know why I thought that was cool. And I remember somebody was like, "We should go to Subway for lunch," and I was like, "Subway backwards,
all right,
is y'all bus. Give me a y'all bus."
No, just put the screen on. I'm done. Thank you.
Y'all bus.
Nice.